Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to today's event. My name is Heather Payton and I'll be the host for today's event. Today we're going to be talking about insurance for your assurance team. Along with me in the room, I have our presenters, Rick Goad and Chris Krause, so I'll introduce in just a few minutes. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. One, I want to start by again thanking you for joining us. I know everybody is busy. It's the time of year where things just get busier. So we appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us. We will be recording today's event, so if you want to share this event or go watch it again, you'll have that opportunity. We encourage you to submit your questions throughout the event. Just go ahead and use the Q&A panel. We will address the questions at the end, but please go ahead and submit them as they pop into your head. And then at the end of the event today, we will be doing a demo, so that's always something to look forward to. Okay, with that, let's move to the agenda for today. Great. So we're going to be talking about speed and risk from a market perspective. Following that, we're going to be talking what successful companies are doing to balance speed and risk. How do you go faster? How do you make changes to critical mission-critical applications without introducing risk, and how do you succeed with automation? And we'll actually then show you a quick demo of how Worksoft enables people to succeed with automation. So before we get started with the actual presentations, we've got a few poll questions for you out there. So if you want to go ahead and grab your mouse, we have our first question of the day. Are you more or less concerned about major defects hitting your production systems than you were a year ago? More concerned, less concerned, or about the same? And we'll give it a few seconds for everybody to respond here. So we have our next poll question then. What does most of the functional, who does most of the functional tests in your organization today? Business users, developers, QA, or combination? When we're talking about functional, talking about the traditional functional and unit tests, not your end-to-end tests. And give it a few seconds for folks to respond. And then we have one more poll question that we're going to go ahead and ask. How do you do the majority of your end-to-end tests today? Manually, using HPUFT QTP, using Selenium, using other tools like Worksoft, or we don't do end-to-end tests? Great. That'll go ahead and close our polls. We want to thank you for today, your participation in those polls. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the speakers for today. Okay, so our first presenter I'm going to introduce is Rick Goad. So Rick, interesting background on Rick. Rick used to play soccer at Stanford, actually. And so he is no stranger to the need for speed and agility. With that, he's joined the Worksoft team as our Vice President of the Solution Architect team, where he's responsible for helping clients connect Worksoft technology with the business value via the delivery of ROI models and consistent consulting. Prior to joining Worksoft, Rick worked at Oracle/Siebel for about 15 years, where he held various positions in consulting. So no stranger to the challenges of mission-critical applications in the enterprise and all that goes along with them. And next we're going to have Chris Krause, who's the Senior Director of Product Management at Worksoft. In this role, Chris is responsible for the development and direction of the Worksoft automation platform. Chris spends much of his time talking about how enterprise clients can adopt the principles of DevOps and showing the latest and greatest upcoming innovations from Worksoft off. Chris was one of the first 10 employees of ITTO, where he contributed to the invention of lease or SOA testing and service virtualization. After ITTO was acquired by CA, he led the development of CA Continuous Application Insights and CA's headless API testing strategy. Chris holds multiple patents and is a frequent presenter at industry events and customer conferences. He's also an avid photographer, yoga practitioner, and world traveler. So with that, now we're going to move into the contents of today's event, and I'll be turning things over to Rick Go. Rick?
All right. Thanks, Heather. Although I understand the concept of speed, I did not possess speed back in my playing days. But I did have an agile mind. So speaking of speed, as you guys can see from the quote here by Mario Andretti, this actually discusses speed. But with speed comes risk. So how do you mitigate risk while you're increasing the speed of what you do? We're going to talk about those concepts today. So one of the things that you're going to hear quite often as you move through DevOps and Agile world is test fast, fail fast, and adjust fast, right? So that's what we want to do, and that's what we want to talk about today. So with speed, as we said, comes risk. Here's just a couple of examples where some really high-profile companies like the New York Stock Exchange and United Airlines, they undertook some serious pain because they didn't have all their bases covered, right? And that's digital risk. So who knows where these problems got started, but at some point in their QA chain, they didn't account for something. So what happened? Well, they're down 3 to 5 hours. What does that mean for them? That means they're losing billions of dollars potentially in revenue. And the same is true of United Airlines. They have hard dollar costs when planes don't take off on time because of things that are within their control, right? So that's what we want to avoid. We want to go fast, but we want to manage that risk as we go through. So here's an example of the state of DevOps, the state of DevOps report comparing 2016 with 2017. The things that you should take away are the high performers compared to the low performers are really getting things out the door a lot faster. So, interesting thing here in the first metric, there was a drop off between how quickly they were able to deploy between 2016 and 2017. That's actually natural because what they're doing, as you'll see in our customer roadmap here later, is you start out with the things that are high ROI, the things you can automate quickly with a lot of certainty. The biggest thing that we're seeing here as they get better, as the top performers get better, is that their mean time to recover is improving. Like it's almost 4 times better this year than it was last year because of how they're operating in an agile world. So that's actually really good for them. And their change failure rate, the amount of defects that are entering into any of their systems, they're 1/5 as likely to undergo those defects. So really this is a testament to the fact that you can move fast if you mitigate your risk. And that's the topic of today, is how to manage through those changes. So what are you testing today? Now at Worksoft, we like to ask our customers the question, are you testing your software or are you testing your business, right? So all the software that you buy, enterprise packaged applications, those companies are responsible for ensuring that the software works as they deliver it to you. But what we see is that we really see a huge need for businesses and IT organizations to ensure that that software supports their business. But if you want to do that, you have to do what's called end-to-end business process testing, which actually can be quite difficult. This is just an example diagram of how end-to-end business processes have varying entry points. You could come from a laptop, a desktop, a phone, a mobile tablet, an API. You could start in Salesforce, start in SuccessFactors, start with SAP. The point here is that end-to-end business processes have many twists and turns, and there's a lot of things that you have to test. But that testing actually becomes very difficult if you don't have automation. So why are end-to-end tests so hard to automate? Well, here's a list of reasons, but really it's because they're complex. End-to-end processes usually involve various systems of record, various actors, various roles, and a lot of different application touch points that are hard to do. And typically, the way that people do this, and you saw this on the poll, a lot of this today is done manually, and manually is a very difficult way to achieve end-to-end processes and end-to-end process testing. So interesting to see the poll results in a minute, but I'm going to guess that a lot of people are not doing end-to-end tests today the way that Worksoft views end-to-end testing. And as you see from IDC's report on DevOps, the bottom stat there, only 16% of end-to-end business scenarios are executed with test tools. I think that kind of proves out what we're saying here, is that if you look at an end-to-end process through the lens of automation, you can move fast and you can manage risk, but you have to have a really good plan to get there. So go ahead, Chris, one more. So how do you do this? Well, you have to do what we call get off the automation roller coaster. And the roller coaster is really a great image for your mind to think about automating these end-to-end processes, because there are many twists and turns. There are lots of ups and downs. You're upside down. You may get a little sick to your stomach. But if you have a good plan, you're going to get through it. And we're going to talk about how you get through that. So you'll notice that with a lot of our imagery today, we're talking about going down a path or a road, or actually being on a journey. So I'm going to tell you a quick story about one of our customers who's currently on an automation journey that will never end. And that's a good thing, right? That's a really good thing. So Applied Materials, for those of you guys that don't know, it's a technology company based out in Silicon Valley. It's got over 15,000 employees, almost 11 billion US in revenue. They've been on the CIO 100, Information Week 500, Computer World Best Places to Work in IT. Really, really strong company with a really diverse technology landscape, right? So just a few systems that they have in place. They have, a new Workday for their HCM transformation. They're using SAP CRM, supply chain, governance and risk management, business warehouse, core ERP, solution manager. They do have a suite on HANA, supply relationship management. So they have a pretty complex SAP and enterprise landscape there. So what they were trying to do was they were trying to increase their pace of change. So the market that they're in is just like everybody else. They're under heavy competition, and one of the ways that you could beat your competition is you can be a better and more agile IT organization and get more things done for the business. This was what their goal was. So as you can see, they started out, they said, we're going to start out with a small project where we're going to use Worksoft automation. In that case, that small project was a technical upgrade of SAP. So what they found was doing that upgrade with Worksoft went 40% faster than it did without Worksoft. So they're like, hey, this is pretty good. Let's keep going with this. So the next thing they did was they needed to upgrade their SAP CRM. So what they did then was utilize Worksoft in conjunction with upgrading their SAP CRM. And what they found was they got to 90% coverage. They had 90% of their tests for this SAP CRM upgrade done with Worksoft, and that was a huge improvement over where they were previously. So then, as you guys can see, they're going down this journey, and they're starting to do more and more and more with automation. And with every turn in the road, they're finding that they're getting better and better results for their business, which they're proactively sharing with the business leaders at Applied Materials. So, some interesting things that they did. They replaced 8,000 manual test steps. They're saving $10,000 with each refresh that they do. Over $60,000 saved, I think, in the first couple of months of their project, which was really, really, really strong. Now, as they continued their journey, what they found was they started to automate some of these monthly processes and reporting with Worksoft Business Process and Procedure. It's a great reporting tool to tell them exactly how they're doing, how their tests are running, what's the result of all the tests, et cetera. Now, one of the great things that they do, which we encourage all of our customers to consider, is start to centralize some of these learnings by using Worksoft automation. So they did this so that they could then support more enterprise applications with Worksoft. So they have a formal test and support office as well. Now, another interesting little tidbit about Applied Materials is that they used Worksoft to determine potential impact of an upgrade to Windows 10 for their SAP users. And this was a really interesting concept. It's not something that we talk about often, but they were able to understand just how much risk they would have by introducing Windows 10 in a broad way across their business with their usage of SAP. So that was actually a great result for them. Now, another thing that they do is they're using Worksoft to actually test, do their disaster recovery processes work as they're designed. This is another use of automation that people typically don't think of. Yeah, we'll talk more about that later. But those guys at Applied Materials had great results. They're a great Worksoft customer, and we really appreciate their business. So let's talk about the things that we've learned from, not only from Applied Materials, but a lot of our customers, which is how do you succeed with automation? Well, what we advise people to do is, don't think about automation as a technology, think about it as a business strategy, because that's essentially what you're doing, is enacting business strategy through technology. We see automation as critical to the success of a company. It's not just whether or not a project or a system is going to be up and running and working as designed. People that are strategic about automation are actually category leaders. That's what a lot of our customers are. The other thing that automation does is it actually gives you more agility and the ability to make changes faster, right? And we talked about at the very beginning. Move fast, fail fast, so that you can adjust fast. And that's what automation does, specifically Worksoft automation. We also invite people to think about the entire change management process and not just automating tests, right? There are a lot of other things that go within change management besides testing. You guys know what they are, but think about things beyond just testing. So here's what another journey up a mountain may look like in your automation journey. Look at it as a long-term plan that has stepwise increments, right? You can't climb a mountain all at once. You have to do it one step at a time. So just as Applied Materials did, think about what you're going to do. The first thing is create a framework for measuring what business outcomes you're going to drive through your automation. Next thing to do is really advertise the successes. We've seen this work really well. There are a lot of successes that we've had within our customer base, and we encourage our customers to go advertise those successes. Once you have a specific measurement that impacts the business, go ahead and advertise that. Make that well known. Sing it from the top of the mountain once you get there. Also, you saw from Applied Materials and also the leaders report for high performers through the state of DevOps. Prioritizing your projects and where you're going to get the most bang for your buck in short order with automation is a must, right? So what's the biggest pain for the business? Go work with them, prioritize that, automate those projects, those systems, so that is, that's just going to drive those results that you're measuring. We talked about how Applied Materials and other customers have a test center of excellence or a centralized testing office where they're, essentially sharing the success of their Worksoft projects throughout the enterprise, and we think that's a great thing to do. The next thing is enlist the help of the business. We're going to talk in a minute about how you utilize business users to increase and accelerate the automation through Worksoft. And then lastly, continue that journey. Think about things beyond testing to increase the ROI. So just to build on that, that first stat there is, that's troubling for us. We worry about that because we really see that people that are testing leaders really need to be intimate with business leadership as well, so that you can have a conversation about the types of impacts that you're providing, as well as what you need to work on in the future, right? So that's something that we really, we want to see our customers take a leadership position in reducing that percentage right there, because it really needs to be a partnership, and that's essentially what part of what DevOps is telling us as well. So what do we want to measure? Well, we definitely want to measure how long it takes to do things before and after. We definitely want to measure how much things cost. And then we want to put those two things together so that we can actually produce what's called a return on investment, or ROI. You guys have all heard those terms before, but the ROI in process automation and end-to-end business process testing is actually extremely, extremely high. Just a couple of examples that you see at the bottom of the screen, a couple of Worksoft customers that just recently presented at our customer conference. Newport News Shipbuilding, 80% time savings. You know, go find me a business leader that doesn't want to say, yes, I won't sign up for 80% time savings. They all will, hands down. And Honda, with HANA, try to say that 3 times fast, you can't do it. What they did was they really, they were using HP UFT, and they converted to Worksoft. And what they found there was obviously just a huge improvement in time spent on testing with greatly reduced maintenance, right? So what does that do? That frees people up to go do other things for the business. And that's really, for us, what automation is all about. So let's talk about transferable automation. You know, every business leader wants 1 + 1 = 3, but at Worksoft, we're going to give you 1 + 1 = 4. And what does that mean? Well, you know, typically we're reducing manual testing by 30 to 80%. It widely varies across our customer base, but it's usually within that range. And how do we do that? One of the ways that we do it is that we allow the business users to participate in automation. So that's what that 1 + 1 = 4 is. Like, you can start with one business user just doing their job, capturing their normal business process. We can turn that into documented requirements for the application team within IT. We can turn that into an executable test within Worksoft. We can provide specific documentation step-by-step for operations, which will help with things like Sarbanes-Oxley compliance and other regulatory items. And then for the business, we give them a great analysis and pictorial of exactly how their business works. You'd be surprised at how often somebody will describe a business process that they think is going on in their company, and they'll have it wrong. Right? But that's what Worksoft transferable automation will provide you. So, as we said earlier, we want you guys to continue your automation journey beyond just process testing. There are many different things that the Worksoft automation platform will provide beyond just testing. Some of those things are, go ahead and, if you have a lot of configuration to do, automate it. If you have a lot of data to load, automate it. If you have many documents to generate, go ahead and automate those as well. And lastly, consider using automation to do those, those rote tasks that just happen every month or happen every week. Those are definitely candidates for automation, and the Worksoft automation platform provides those capabilities. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris, and he's going to talk a little bit about that 1 + 1 = 4 Worksoft transferable automation equation.
So, hello everyone. So what I'm going to do is actually go to an application. So what I have is SuccessFactors. And what I want to do is become the persona of the business user to understand how can the business user start the journey of automation. Remember the summits all the way up to rethink, and the 1 + 1 = 4. So what I'm going to ask the business user to do is start something called Capture on their desktop. And what Capture does is just a small little application runs on the tray, and it's just going to let me observe my workflow. So I'm going to come into here, I'm going to say begin capture, and then in this case, I ask the business users to do a little bit extra work. I'm going to ask them to name things so I kind of know what they're doing. So I'm going to say, please name your activities. I'll say, what are you doing? I'm doing a success login. So name it. And I'll come into the application. And I'll log in. And what you'll notice in the lower right-hand corner, Capture is just quietly doing its job. It's just sitting there observing as the user works through the system. No big deal. Okay, I come to, obviously, my favorite new UI, Fiori, and I'm going to go over into the org chart view. So I'll select my org chart, and I'll navigate in. So the idea is the user is going to walk through their workflow the way they normally do. I'm going to then, I'll name this activity. I'll call it the org chart, so they kind of know what I'm interested in here. So I see there's Sean Williams. He's not the conductor, I don't think. I think he's a normal guy. I can see some details about him. Maybe the user journey, they walk through and they look at the different actions you can take on their employees. They may drill into John. Now notice, I'm not doing anything unusual or different. I'm just walking my normal business process. Capture is doing its job in the background. Okay, I can see a really nice page. It is lazy loading. This little dot, dot, dots is basically these new modern, robust applications. These UI5 in this case, or HTML5 applications, have a lot of dynamic things in the background. So I'm just going to name this detail. And I'm going to look. If I scroll down a little bit, I can see, yeah, John's got a personnel ID. Kind of interested in that. So normally, if I was doing a manual test, let me verify his personnel ID is correct, things like that. And then I'll log out of the system. So what happens is the persona of the business user basically walks through their daily job, shows me how they're working with the application, and they've created this thing called a capture. I'll end my capture, and I'll upload it to analyze. And it's successfully uploaded. So the idea is they've done a job. Now, as someone in IT, a business user, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to Analyze and see what they've done. So I'm going to go see what's happened today. Let me make sure our password's right. Yep, easy for me to type. Or not. Did I misspell a name? Maybe.
How are you doing?
That's on like live software.
This is how you know it hasn't been recorded, right, Chris?
This is the first time I've seen this problem with you guys.
Yeah. There we go. Type it slower, it comes up right. Okay.
That's the easy part.
Yeah, that's the easy part. And so what I can see here is I have a workflow. I have the successful login, the org chart, and the details. So the business user basically capture observed what they did. So the business user and the QA person, or the IT guy, they should be able to work together and kind of figure out, well, what does this mean? What does this workflow do? So if I click and say details, I can see there's 2 captures done today, and I can see there's some screenshots. So they walk through the different parts of the application. So interesting thing is, what were the users doing? Okay, what happens here? So a problem we have in automation is we don't know what to automate. What is your workflow? So ideally, all we have to do is highlight this and say create documentation. I'm going to name this Success 11 and generate a PDF. So what I'm asking the software to do is create a detailed documentation of the user journey through the application. So this way, instead of having to open the notepad and do screenshots and manually document the process, what I'm doing is I'm actually asking the user to do their normal job, and then we'll document it. Okay, here's my PDF file. And so what I get now is a really nice documentation to show my SuccessFactors application. Now, the reason I use SuccessFactors is because really it is an amazing application because there's very little HTML. There's lots of HTML5 and beautiful graphical renderings, right? So I can see they went to the org chart, they walked through the application, they clicked on the John Williams. I can see they did the take action, they drilled into John Williams and actually saw his details, and they logged out. So at this point, I now have very actionable document of how I traversed through the system, what I did. Now, I created a PDF file, but quite honestly, I could also create this as a Word document and handshake this to my training department and my other parts of the organization need to understand what are my business processes. I could also do things like export this into BPMN. So I could actually handshake to business analysts and say, if you want a BPMN model of how I do my order processing or how I do my hire to retain or order to cash, I can handshake that to them also. So the concept of transferable automation is, let's start with something simple, asking a business user to create documentation and then leverage it across the organization. So the other thing I can do is I can actually go create automation. So this is the coolest part, I think, because what happens is, as a quality engineer, if I put that hat on, one of my biggest problems is talking to the users and find out what do they do? What do I need to test? What are your top 5 mission critical processes that have to happen every day? Well, I actually ask them to capture those. I can visually see them, I can organize them in my mind, but then I can actually go over and start working with them. So if I come over into Certify, what I'm going to do is import that automation. Yep, I can type my password in that system today. So I'll come over to my sandbox and Chris, 103. So I've got one that I ran this morning, obviously, because let's face it, it's always good to make sure your demo works in the morning. I'm going to say, I'm going to import analyze generated automation. So I'll log in. Let's make sure I type this password right. And I can see success 11. So it has not been imported today. This is the one I just created. I'll go through and I'll do an import on it. Now, what's happened is my certified here has reached out over to analyze, and it said, okay, here's the process you generated. And it's given me a parent process. There is a login process, an org chart process, and a detail process. So if I go look at one of those, and I look at the login, what I'll see is I have some steps. I'll go and double click it. And inside of here, I can see a very nice narrative. I input S. Davis. I input blank in the password field. Well, obviously, we don't want to steal people's passwords. So we understand that's the password field and blanked it out. I'll just go grab a variable that I've created with the password in it and enter it here. So I've literally added to my test. Okay, obviously, if you can run Excel spreadsheets, you can totally do this, right? I said, take the password and use a variable that someone's created. I'll save that. And let me look at the rest of this process. So it kind of parameterized it for me. There was the org chart view, which walked through the org chart, and it clicked on different things. And then there's the details view. Okay, the details actually did a click on the person ID. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to edit this test. So one thing we find that test automation engineers need to do is they need to take an example process from an end user and edit it, variabilize it like I just did with the password, or change different things. Well, what the user did is they clicked on the user ID. What I'm going to do is I'm actually just change that action here and say turn that into a verify. So please make sure that is 100-112 is the personality. So what I'm showing you here is I'm actually editing a process in Certify. Now notice I'm not opening an editor, I'm not opening an IDE, I'm not writing script, I'm not writing code. What I'm doing is I'm just looking at my English narratives and then manipulating a couple things on the page. So the idea is mere mortals can actually author these tests. I don't have to be a guru at coding to do this. So we find that by lowering the technical barrier, more people can participate in that process. That's how we get 1 + 1 = 4. Okay? So of course, the proof is in the pudding. Let me just go on and run this process. Okay? So I'm going to say capture every screen because quite honestly, everybody likes to capture every screen, and we'll just make the DBAs work a little bit harder, right? So I'll start. So what I can see here is my execution window. And I'll just start stepping through. So I step through my running. I can see it's going to start entering the data. It's just going to put my username. Come back, I'll put my password. And I'll click the login. Okay? So basically, my automated test is going through and entering the data. So it looks pretty similar to the way the user would do it. They keep stepping, but I'll notice it'll jump over into my org chart. And then I finish my first process, right? And if I keep stepping, what did I do? I actually went to the org chart and I started highlighting things. I clicked on John. And then I opened up his actions. So the cool thing is each step is happening, the automated software is doing the work for me. I'm actually capturing screenshots. So what would be helpful with these screenshots? Why would I want to do this? Well, one thing is I need to, a lot of times, prove to auditors that the system did what it's supposed to do. whether it could be Sarbanes-Oxley audits or my change control board, or maybe it's my end-of-sprint demos. In my case, if I get an end-of-sprint demo as a product owner and I just see reports for my automated tests, I am thrilled because I know that the tests run the same way every time. So my documentation can be used in multiple places. Hence, this is where we get into that 1 + 1 = 4. So I've run my test, it succeeded. So I look at what happened along the way. When I enter data, I've got screenshots of the application, so I can see what's happened. It's logged in, those great things, okay? And then I can also do something like create a report. So for my results, I can actually create a business process procedure report that gives me something auditable so that my auditors can see it. Now, of course, you think to yourself, okay, hold on, but my audits are on Quality Center. Great. Just take your certified process and you can import it into Quality Center and run it from there. Therefore, your audit reports go there. Maybe you just need to put your audit reports in a SharePoint file, or they go in a file system. Let your BPP reports go out there. So I can actually just look at my results. I can actually take it, I can right-click and say, create a BPP report, select the report I want, and send it off. So the idea is I've taken a simple action of discovering what a user does, the business user. I just let them do their job, and then I went into analyze with them. So usually the QA person and the business analyst can work together, collaborate there, look at the process, say, yep, that's what we did, that's how we do it, great. Go generate the documentation for them. They can have that documentation and say, this is how we do things. They can create that in a PDF or Word document, give that Word document to training and say, this is how we want you to train. I've already got your screenshots and your narratives for you. Just insert this in your manuals, right? So that's just good for operations. Then quality engineering says, how do I need to validate my mission critical business processes every day? Well, I want to do that through automation. I want to run them through my DevOps pipeline, right? So the idea is I take the automation, and you saw me edit it in real time. All I did was take my simple process and I variabilized it. I put a simple variable in my password because I didn't want that to be hard-coded. And then my details view, I validated that I got the right person ID. So I now have a checkpoint, an audit that proves my application is working as designed. The final thing I can do is I can actually take that BPP report and then present that in my sprint in demos, or I can see that as documentation for my auditing for change control boards. Now, remember, on that journey that we talked about, the last thing on the right was the rethink. Well, okay, rethink, could I actually use this in the future? Well, in this case, Applied Materials takes these tests and they apply them to their disaster recovery environment. They monthly validate their DR plan. So this would be a great test case that I could actually go run to verify my DR work. Did SuccessFactors come up? Did my actual employees get loaded with the correct data? Okay. Other things that were mentioned is, rote data entry. Like if you actually have to go onboard people in your organization and what you get from the recruiters in Excel spreadsheet. Well, you could read that and automate entering them into SuccessFactors automatically. So there's basically a lot of RPA that can be done also in that rethink side. So that's my demo. Of course, there's a lot more demos out there on YouTube. So if you go to the Worksoft channel, you'll see how you can actually run this from Jenkins. You can see what does an exploratory test look like and those type things. So we'll come back to our title, Insurance for Your Assurance Teams. So what did I show you in the demo? Automated discovery. I let the business user walk through their daily job. Okay. I then can take and create automation. I run that in a continuous manner. That means I could run it from Quality Center. I could run it from Jira. I could run it from, say, Rational, and any of those great tools out there where I need to keep my systems of record. But of course, outcome of that is actually my reporting and compliance documentation, okay? And then I could extend this, and maybe I'll use this in my DR. Now, the other two things we could do is actually talk about impact analysis. So if you're actually running in SAP GUI or an SAP process, we can actually do some risk-based testing and analysis for you. So I didn't show you that because I was actually in a really nice website called SuccessFactors. It's part of the SAP suite, written in HTML5. So the idea is how can we discover, build our tests, run them consistently, and do something very actual with those reports, and extend the automation, maybe with some RPA, or maybe the extension is just getting those auditors off your back. Okay. So how do we actually do this? So the Worksoft automation platform for enterprise application teams. So in your lower right-hand corner, you see our solution platform. So that's our core concept of object action framework. I don't need to write code to test my code, because at a certain point, I've got a system with bugs in it if I write 2,000 lines of code, right? We've got our discovery engine, our analytics engine, our reporting engine, our execution engine, our automation client. Those are the things that you saw that I manipulated. On the other side, there's actually our automation accelerators. So I actually have an accelerator that understands Oracle Business Suite, and understands SAP GUI. In this case, we use our cross-browser technology. So attached in .ae, I can do it from Chrome or Firefox, what have you, and actually go test an application there. Well, what this does is this gives me the core automation framework for all these enterprise applications so I can go validate them. Okay. On top of that is our services layer. And that's where our partners start building third-party services. We connect to our CI/CD platforms, continuous testing, continuous delivery, continuous deployment. And then we integrate with third-party things like Selenium and SwiftUI, and of course all of our traditional integrations to ALM platforms itself. Now the interesting thing is, everything here circled has been actually rewritten and completely new. So when we talk about the reporting engine, the discovery engine, the execution engine, the core heart execution engine for certifying, yes, it was written in 1998. It was rewritten in 1999. But you know what? 2 years ago, we went through an effort to completely modernize and rewrite the platform. So that's actually been rewritten. The automation client now supports an interior architecture for connectivity versus the old client server. Our interfaces have been updated. We have new interfaces for mobile, cross-browser, Oracle and .NET, and then Oracle Business Suite. And then exposing all that power, we've now done through a common services layer. So the way you get to the certifying processes, the reports, and the execution is through our services layer. And this is where our partners have started building automation accelerators on top of there. In some cases, we're using the APIs to connect to Jenkins and TeamCity. Other cases, they're actually taking our automation accelerators, so our ability to test Fiori applications and pre-build test cases automations there. So the cool thing is there's tons of innovations that happened in the last 2 years. We've rewritten the platform. We're now staged for these really cool modern applications. So what I have to do is I have to challenge you. This is where our journey starts. So think about, how can I gain that 1 + 1 = 4? How can I work on transferable automation? But remember, the key to success was that you started small and they measured it. They didn't measure everything. They came up with a handful of metrics to say, how do I measure success? So how do I internally promote myself to expand? And then how far can I take my journey? Do I take it just to automation? Do I take it to continuous testing? Do I actually tie it into my CD platform? Or do I take it all the way to compliancy, auditing, and to RPA? So your journey can go as far as you want to take it, whatever makes sense to your business. The trick is measure and create some OI reports so you can show the path you're on. So at this point, we'll open up for questions.
Great. So if you have a question, please go ahead and submit it into the Q&A panel, and we'll be taking those now. We already have a few questions in the queue that we'll go ahead and get started with. Rick, this first one came in during your presentation. I'm interested in developing metrics, but I don't have a baseline. Where do I start? Is that something Worksoft helps with?
Yeah, absolutely. We work with a lot of our customers to establish those baseline metrics. And typically what we're looking for is, on a specific application or a set of applications, how much time do you spend testing today? How many people does it take? And how much can we reduce that by? And again, you know, what we're doing there is we're replacing manual labor typically with what we call digital labor, and usually there's really, really large ROI there. So that's, you know, we've got a number of other metrics that we help our customers establish and implement, Heather, but you know, that's the simplest one to start.
Great. So we have a few more questions. This one, Rick or Chris, I guess you could take. How can I become Worksoft certified, and from where? How much does it cost?
Well, Worksoft certified, what that means is you would go to Worksoft University off of our worksoft.com website, and you can actually take a lot of the training classes for free. So you go through, you do the training classes. there are two parts of certification. There's some practical part and there's a written test part. So you can take the written test part to show proficiency in the tool, but also there's working with your consultant to make sure that they understand, your proficiency there. So your starting spot is Worksoft University, and from there, you'll get a roadmap of how to get your certification.
Okay, great. We have a few more questions. Is the capture available on-premise now?
Yes. This is Chris. Sure, Capture is available on-premise now. You can actually run Capture on your desktop, and then you upload those. So yeah, Capture actually runs on the business users, like Windows desktop in the tray, like I showed.
Okay, we have a question here from Mike. Can you talk a little bit more about how Certify is used for RPA? Rick, you want to start with that one?
Yeah, sure. So we have a number of customers that use RPA in various ways. One of the most common ones that I've seen in like the last 2 or 3 months is they're really starting to automate what they call their month-end close. Because as it turns out, there are just a handful, a couple dozen, depends on the company, different data sources that come in. So you have financial data in ERP systems, you have it in finance-only systems, you have it in Excel. So what people are doing is they're taking all those tasks that they perform the same way every single month, and they're having Worksoft go in, gather, aggregate, and collect the data for month-end close. And then what the financial people do after that is they'll just go verify the results and produce additional documentation as that company sees fit. We see that quite a bit.
Yeah, another one I've seen is, because me, product manager, I'm always closer to the developers, is with mergers and acquisitions, when they're moving from one company's data systems to another company's data systems. Like a lot of times, the systems, the best way to get the data in is through the user interface because it hits all the validation checks. So I've seen people like take their payroll or HR data, export it out of the legacy system, and then use a certified process or RPA to go enter that into the new system so all the validations go. Yeah. Even with parts catalogs, and think about master data as you're doing a company merger of two things together. So we do see a lot of people run RPA because in reality, a certified process in most cases runs 5 to 20 times faster than human typing. So instead of saying, oh my gosh, you have to move the master data catalog and there's 4 million items in it, well, we can actually type that into the UI much faster with RPA than human beings. And so sometimes that's a much more safe way to move the data because all the validations are there versus just doing a database copy.
Okay, great. We have another question. What is the connectivity method to SAP Solution Manager? What integration is delivered and how much must be developed?
Okay, it's actually all out of the box. So Solution Manager, if you're on 7.1 or 7.2, and 7.1's been around forever, for 8 years, and 7.2's been around for about a year. So it is all out of the box. So what happens is Worksoft is a certified integration into Solution Manager. So when you create your test case in Solution Manager and you click, you want an automated test, the button will say Certify. And in turn opens the Certify UI. You can author your test. That could be maybe a SAP GUI test, SuccessFactors, maybe it's like a C# app or Java app, what have you. That's part of your end-to-end process with SAP, and then you save the test. Now, we have a lot of cool integrations with that. It also has version management inside of Solution Manager. You have promotion of your tests between environments. Then what happens in Solution Manager is the normal life cycle is I need to go run the test. So you go into Solution Manager and you ask for the test to run. It then calls Certify, the test to run. The results are saved back into CBTA log inside of Solution Manager. So the integration of offering tests and running tests and getting results are there. If you're on the larger steps where you've got to do your T-bombs and using Change Analyzer or BPCA, you start your Change Analyzer, you identify your environment, start your T-bomb, and then when you run your test cases in Soulman, that in turn runs Certify, and then you get your Change Analyzer, your T-bomb reports out of there also. So highly integrated. We've got quite a few customers in Europe who are actually taking this full life cycle, and actually there's been a lot of interest in the US. And so we are what's called a focused solution for SAP, and so we are tightly coupled with Solution Manager so that you have a very seamless experience.
Great. So we've got a few more questions in the queue. Rick, this one looks like it's for you. You talked about why testing UIs is so challenging. Does Worksoft have any tools or resources to help people test custom UIs or non-standard UIs?
Oh, absolutely, we do. You know, we spend most of our time doing packaged applications, but the Worksoft platform itself provides for testing any user interface, really. You know, so yeah, we do have tools built into the platform, for doing so, Heather.
Yeah, so our interfaces can test web, .NET, Java, custom apps that you've built, but also, you know, Salesforce, SuccessFactors, Hybrids, Fiori, SAP GUI, Oracle, all those cool things are all available. And then remember, we need to stimulate those end-to-end business processes. We do integrate things like SOAP UI to hit data on the wire for stubs and mocks.
Great. So we have another couple questions here. Does Certify require programming knowledge? Actually,
no. You saw I didn't actually write any lines of code. So we consider ourselves to be a code-free environment. What we did is the technology, the interface, observed me walking through the application. It split it up into nice little processes for me, and then all I did was change and variabilize something. So I moved something from being hard-coded to use a variable. That's about it. So you don't have to like understand how to use Ruby or Python or .NET or C#. We're not a coding solution. We're based on what's called an object action framework. And so you don't have to write code to test.
Great. So along the lines of that question, we have another question in the queue. Maybe we can kind of categorize our response to this question based on script-based, record and play, or other object-based things. Can you tell me the advantage of Certify over other automation tools in the market? So, Rick, you're going to take a shot from the business perspective, and then Chris, you from the technical.
Yeah, so if you remember back to the 1 + 1 = 4, Heather, I mean, I think that's really one of the unique aspects of the platform is that we can get the business user to tell us what they do without having to communicate with them, and that simple capture is very powerful. So then you saw that get transferred into very specific, detailed, step-by-step process documentation, and also automatically creates test assets at the same time. You know, so that's one of the things that we do. And the other thing is, you know, we've found over the years that with our customer base, we had to make this platform highly scalable. You know, and Chris mentioned how we have an n-tiered architecture so that we can do, you know, multiple thousands of concurrent tests at the same time, which many of our customers do. We have a lot of the Fortune 100 that utilize the Worksoft platform, and if we weren't scalable and performant, you know, they wouldn't be able to do that. So that's, you know, I think those are a couple of things.
Great. Chris?
Okay. From the technology perspective, the biggest difference is our object action framework. So when Technically Certify was born back in 1998, Linda Hayes said there has to be a better way to write a test than teaching people how to code. And she felt that she was just taking some really brilliant business people into the process and trying to teach them the code. So the concept, and our patents are on the object action framework, is that there's different objects out there. You should interact with them the same way. It doesn't matter what the underlying technology is. So in a certified process, if you do a button, you say click button. It doesn't matter if it's on a web page, a Java app, a mobile app, or an SAP GUI. You just say click button, and we know how to handle that for you. Now the trick is we consolidate all those objects into a consistent library and version them. So basically, the biggest problem with test automation is not the initial authoring, it's the maintenance. What happens when something changes? So what we do is we identify objects by IDs. We keep them in versions of applications. So as one button changes, maybe the attribute changes, or maybe a checkbox turns into a radio button, things like that. We can actually make one change to a definition, and then all of a sudden, all the tests are still working because we keep everything in the consolidated object library. And that's supported by our really robust database structure we have. So the maintenance is much easier because we automatically identify objects, and we reuse those objects and we version them. So that's technically why we're much more successful than traditional scripting and coding. It's because with coding, if you say change the button definition and you have 10,000 tests, The written code, you have to go change them 10,000 times. In our case, we changed the object definition once. It's inherited by everyone. So that's really where a lot of scalability comes.
Great. Looks like we're about at the end time. Before we wrap things up, we did have a couple closing polls we wanted to ask. If we could again ask you all to grab your mouse. Our first closing poll, what would you be most interested in receiving a follow-up call regarding? Follow-on demo of the Worksoft automation platform, best practices for implementing end-to-end test automation, more on how Worksoft supports continuous testing, more on automated discovery, more on risk-based impact analysis. We don't have an all of the above on there. That was a miss, huh? Okay, and then our last poll to let us know how we did today. Coming up in just a second here. Overall, how would you rate today's presentation? Exceeded expectations, met expectations, or below expectations? And as we're wrapping this up, again, on behalf of Chris and Rick and myself, we wanted to thank you for your time today again and joining us. We hope you found the event valuable. We did record the event, so if you want to go back and watch a part, you will be able to. If we didn't get to your question, we'll follow up with you after the event. And with that, we would like to thank you for joining us and hope you have a great evening or afternoon, depending on where you are in the world.